Welcome to another edition of the Insider Hoop Scoop. I'm Jarret Johnson. I'm joined by the MidMajor Yeager. MidMajor, man, look, there's no way around it. There isn't a lot of good things to talk about right now. The Red Raiders are mired in a 3-game losing streak. Man, it was right there for the taking in overtime. Red Raiders, man, it's too many turnovers down the stretch. MidMajor is just kind of the way I saw it. You know, they played well, played with great effort, great physicality. Some guys really stepped up even when they weren't making shots. And then at the end, they couldn't even get a shot up, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, they did everything but win, is what it came down to. I mean, I certainly can't fault the effort, and they played well. Listen, this game was closer, more competitive than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I figured Tech would lose by maybe 9 points, and they probably wouldn't even be in it very much in the final 6, 7, 8 minutes of the game, but yet they were there, and they had every chance to win that game. I mean, probably you could say they should have won it. I mean,
yeah,
when you were down by 1 point, you get out on that fast break. Looks like you got something cooking there with about 12, 11 seconds left.
Clark,
you hit that shot, you probably win the game. And then I don't know what happens with these guys. You know, I mean, it's just like, is it like a low basketball IQ basketball team? Is that what this is? Because a lot of these turnovers are just guys, just poor judgment. You know, they're just like, you know, you don't do that. Yeah. It's easy for me to say I'm not out there. You know, it looks easy. I understand that. But really good teams, smart basketball teams, they make the right plays, the right judgments. They don't throw the ball into traffic and get it taken away. They don't lob it up there on a fast break with the final shot to win the game. I mean, you make the right play. And these guys just aren't doing it.
I think sometimes, you know, I actually am a fan of analytics, and I am also a fan of kind of the eyeball test as well. I think it takes all of it. I like all the input, you know. That's just me personally. But I think sometimes we overcomplicate things. And I've said this, 2 things all year about this team. One, the rest of the Big 12 better get their licks in because you could see it. We saw it before the season. They shocked us a couple times with some amazingly high ceiling. I think that kind of even fooled us. But we saw some of these struggles coming, and we warned everybody. And I said they better get their licks in because this is going to be the worst team of the golden era of Chris Beard. And the other thing is they don't have that alpha. This isn't a Chris Beard thing. It's a basketball thing. It's not even a college basketball thing. It doesn't matter if you're talking about junior high, high school, college, or the NBA, of course. You got to have that guy that at the end of the game, when it's a 1-possession game, you give them the ball and say, go score for us. And last year they had it with actually 2 guys, with Culver and Mooney. 2 years ago, they had it with Keenan, who was the ultimate. He was unstoppable in game-winning situations. This year, they just don't seem to have it. I mean, I want them to have it, but they don't, whether it be missed free throws, turnovers, like 4 bricks in a row, like we saw against Texas, where Kyler missed literally 3 straight possessions. He missed shots. Now, look, at least he got shots off because against Baylor, they had 3 consecutive turnovers, and I believe 4 out of 5 possessions down the stretch. And then again in overtime, same kind of thing. So, you know, if you can't even get the ball on the rim, you're obviously not going to win. You're not going to score. You're not going to win. So they don't have that guy this year. Do I think they'll have it next year? That's what everybody asked me. That's the next question, and I think that's understandable. Yes, I think they have a couple of candidates. One, Namari Burnett, and another one is Micah Peavy. If you watch what he's doing in the Texas high school playoffs right now, and if you saw what he did in the state championship last year where he actually took over, I think you have a couple of candidates. I know they're going to be young, but it's a freshman's game now in college basketball anyways. So I think they'll have it next year.
Yeah, you know, I mean, as regards this team right now, I mean, ask yourself, who's the MVP of this team? I mean, it's a crapshoot. It
really is.
I mean, it wasn't any question pretty much last year.
Right.
You know, right? It was Culver.
Yeah.
You know, but that's taking nothing away from guys like Mooney and Tariq Owens, those guys, and Owens. I mean, they had all sorts of talent, but Culver was the guy. You know, all right. This year, if you poll, let's say we polled all the subscribers on the website, said, okay, vote
6 different guys.
I mean, it would be split up like 15%, 15, 12, 20. There would be no clear-cut favorite to win this thing. And so I think, to me, Kevin McCullough down the stretch has clearly been your best player, but he was not a factor early on in the season. And although he's getting there, he's still not to the point where he's not obviously at Culver's level. He's not at Mooney's level. You know, but he's one of those guys that next year, in there with Peavy, you know, and
Burnett,
these guys, and Burnett.
Handler,
And in the unlikely event that Ramsey does decide to return, then man, I mean, he will develop into that next year. He's not there right now.
Being a closer is a skill you can develop. Now, a lot of people, oh, either you're closer or you're not. Well, that's true in some cases, but I think in basketball, that's why you see, like, I'll just use the ultimate example, like a Michael Jordan. He had to get past the Detroit Pistons, you know what I mean? Then he had to beat Magic and the Lakers in the finals. I mean, there is an ascendance in the sport where way you learn how to close out games. Keenan wasn't the ultimate closer even as a junior. That was a problem on that team, but he developed into that and he became the ultimate All-American, and he was never better than when they needed him most. And I think that is such an underappreciated skill, and it's not. This isn't just a Chris Beard thing. I hear people say, oh, manufacture shots in the offense. That sounds great. But when you get down in basketball in those clutch moments, things are tight. I mean, some guys can barely breathe, much less run the offense. You need to be able to hand the ball to a guy and take it over. So that's not going to materialize this year. Although I will say McCullough, down the stretch, a couple of guys made some big shots up until the last minute. I think McCullough had 5 points, a nice flash to the lane where he scored in the paint, and then a huge corner three at one point. Right. So he's starting to develop that way. It just takes time, and I think several of those guys are. I think some guys may not ever get there. Like, I'm a little concerned. It seemed like Moretti kind of took a step back in that regard. He made some big shots for you. I think the Gonzaga game is one. I think he made some huge shots. Different role. And then this year, obviously, at the free throw line, there's been some struggles in late games. And then, Ramsey looks like he wants no part of it. There was a point at the end of the game against Baylor where he gave it to Davide, and Davide had to force up a shot at the end instead of, Ramsey. And Ramsey and Shannon are the two guys who can get their shots because of their great gifts, their athleticism, more than anybody. So I'd like to see one of those guys in that situation, just from an athletic standpoint. But all right, this is where they're at. They've lost 3 in a row. They're at 18-12, 9-8 in the Big 12, and they got #1 Kansas coming up, of course, on Senior Day and the regular season finale on Saturday. I believe that's a 1 p.m. tip-off on Saturday. So huge game. It's kind of is it do or die or not? Because I'm not sure on this. I think if you don't win this game, then your fate's kind of out of your hands. Maybe if you win a Big 12 game or two, other than winning the whole Big 12 tournament, which I think this team probably could do, but probably won't. To me, it feels like this could be do or die Saturday.
Yeah, it could. It really could. I think one thing that I've been overlooking, and maybe some other people as well, is these last 2 games against Baylor and Kansas. Mm-hmm. A lot of us been saying, well, you got to win at least one of them, right? Or you may not get in, and that may very well be the case. But I will say this. In losing to #4 Baylor on the road in overtime, and then let's say they lost a close game to Kansas here in Lubbock, okay, those losses, they're not going to hurt you that badly because those teams are so good. I mean, your overall record is going to suffer. Sure. It's not going to look as nice. But I mean, in terms of all the metrics and the net rating and all that stuff, it's not going to damage you that badly. It's not like losing to TCU or somebody like that. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, there is that. I mean, this is not going to be a damaging thing necessarily if they were to lose to Kansas, but it's something that would help you tremendously. Yeah. And it would give you.
I think you're in if you beat Kansas. I don't want to say guarantee because, it's as close as I'm willing to say as a guarantee. If you beat Kansas, you're in. Yeah. You may be in with losing. I think that's what we're debating.
Possibly. Yeah, I think you beat Kansas. I think you're probably a 7 or an 8. Right. You lose, and boy, I think you're talking about at best a 10. Oh yeah. And
maybe the playing game.
Yeah, maybe the playing game, or maybe you don't even make it, and then it would depend on what happens in Kansas City. That could determine whether you are that 10, or if you flame out with the first game, maybe you don't get in.
And there's so many other things that we can't foretell right now, like mid-major tournament game. Like, do the actual regular season winners win, or are there going to be a couple of 2 bids from some of these mid-major types? So there's so many things at play that makes it fluid. I just feel like, to me, I felt like they needed to get at least 1 or 2 more wins in the last 4 games. I feel like if they got to 19 wins going into the Big 12 tournament, they're pretty much in. And they just it hasn't materialized. They've lost 3 in a row. Now they got Big Daddy #1 Kansas coming in. So, look, it's possible for Tech to win. I think it's unlikely, but Azubuike possibly being out is a huge break. Just like Vidal being out was a huge break. Tech could take opportunity or take advantage of this opportunity with a great crowd and Vidal or Azubuike possibly being out. Could be a huge win. I mean, like I said, you win and you're in.
Yes. Yeah, and it's going to be a total war.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, both teams are going to want this thing in the worst possible way. Kansas, they're playing for an outright title in the Big 12. They lose, they share it with Baylor, probably, depending on what happens with Baylor. And Kansas has another game as well. But assuming things go according to form, it's a very, very significant game. They don't want to share the title.
No.
And with Texas Tech, you can be sure they're hearing all this stuff, about you got to win this one if you want to play in the NCAA tournament.
Right.
So the pressure is going to be on. It is going to be, it's the crowd. It's going to be lit again, and I'm expecting. Boy, I hope it's just not another gut punch.
Right.
Where everybody's crying in the press conference and rending their hair and pulling their hair out and beating their chest and wailing.
Let's each give a key. I'm going to jump out and get the obvious one. One quick key. We don't have to go crazy into it, but to me, Tech just has to do a better job of taking care of the ball. I mean, it's hard to win, turn the ball over 20 times. I think they need to cut that close to in half.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And Kansas is a very, very, very good defensive team. So that makes it difficult. Just like Baylor was a very good defensive team. And what happened? 20 turnovers and turned it over in the worst possible moments. So they've got to cut down on that, improve on what they did against Baylor. And if they don't, then they won't win. I think that's number one.
They also need to start getting back to the free throw line more often because they really haven't during this losing streak. That's really killed them. You can debate whether it's the refs or whatever, or their aggressive or lack of aggressive play. But however it happens, they need to get to the line. They need to shoot more free throws because this is a very good free throw shooting team. So I think you do those two things, you have a very good chance of upsetting Kansas, Mighty Joe. But we'll see. Like I said, 1 o'clock Central Time, Saturday at the USA. Texas Tech takes on Kansas with their tournament hopes on the line. Great stuff from you as always. Thank you all for watching, and until next time.